Alright. Alexander. Lynn. Andrew here. Candy. It looks like Kathleen is going to be out. We do need to talk at some point about filling in a position. Do we want to open that up and start trying to get applicants? I haven't heard anything.
Have not yet either, but we can definitely talk about it.
Obviously, no comments, so we will just move to new business. Approval of minutes. Did y'all have a chance to look at that today? No. We have Marissa left, so we've got a few things.
And then I have a question.
Sure, why not?
If someone's on the warrant and they don't show up ever,
I think he has 3 times.
I got to see. It's 3 times in a year.
Okay.
And then you can be removed. That's really up to the mayor, but basically, if you're not, it's 3 times more. You try to, it's a volunteer position, try to work with everybody.
Very good.
Who was this for?
Kathleen.
She's been at most of them on Zoom though, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't have a side.
Oh, it does now, okay.
Well, and here's the thing, at the end of the day, the idea is you have a full group, so you have diverse opinions, so you can make the best decisions. And if she can't vote on there, that means we don't have a diverse voting pool, it means we're not doing our job. So.
And you're not getting any comments.
Is this something where if you heard someone in passing saying, I'd like to be on the planning zone, you can recommend that person? Absolutely.
I've already been done.
I have, I knew we needed Marissa seat, I thought maybe someone already kind of better in the
No,
line.
we briefly talked about there's so much going on in the town right now that we have not done it.
So I'll talk to Kathleen in a week or two, see where she's at and see what we need to do.
We need a commitment that she'll be here the rest of the year, otherwise we might need to look somewhere else.
That's it. Fair deal.
Approval of minutes, I didn't see anything, so that's a new deal.
That's good.
We have.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Okay. All right. This is gonna be pretty quick game. One last thing we're gonna talk about is going to be site ordinance. I know Warren's worked a little bit on this, but I think with stuff going on in the city and then dealing with waiting on city to kind of collaborate. Got a few things tied up, but do you want to talk about this briefly, or do you just want me to go through?
Yeah, let me talk about it a little bit briefly. So last time I brought something to you, we had got rid of about 10 pages, but I think there was still about 40 left. And but the idea that Brandon has, and Tim's looking at it, we're trying to work on it, is maybe cut it down quite a bit more, but instead of saying that these are things that are not allowed, that the only things that are allowed are the things that are stated that are allowed. So how that would look is it would take a lot of the first 10, 15 pages that talk about just
Definitions and all that stuff.
Yeah, that was a lot of it would get removed. So that, I think that was the thought. Trying to see how that would work. And I haven't done a little bit of work, waiting for Tim on a few things. But I think it's, what's that?
It's looking good. I feel the way
We still want to make a lot of progress. I think we would like to get it down to something that is
Yes.
a skeleton in size of what it is, something like 10 pages or something, but I know he's working diligently on it. More importantly, we're looking to see, has anybody over the past month or two had time to think about more and want to add in?
Well, I just had these things I said last time. I meant to leave this with you last time,
Okay.
was to do the word search for poll, to remove that out of there. If we were doing changeable copy, did we leave that as not allowed? Changeable copy sign, digital signs.
So what's changeable copy?
That's like the one in front of Relay where you can take the plastic piece off and put a plastic piece on.
Well, this was more for the digital. Are we still not allowing digital that the church wanted? This is sort of why this came up, the fine ordinance.
Yeah, I think that's what we
It's still not
agreed.
allowed, okay.
Because I
They
think
can
the
move
biggest,
forward with the new.
Okay,
yeah, I think the issue we ran into is it's hard to write into an ordinance that it's allowed for the churches because we have so many churches on 281. The fear was that you have
Okay.
12 of them.
okay, so I'm gonna remove that, was not one. On the sandwich board, just add it needed to be brought in after hours. And,
You keep the sheet, I'm sorry, make sure.
and then just that on businesses that close, I know particularly Julie and I, that they needed to remove the sign within
Yes, we
60
did get that one
days.
put in there.
I mean, sort of like the bank removed them immediately, like, I'm sort of thinking the buyer's not gonna want their signs up, but if it does get left to the buyer, give it 60 days to remove it, because 60 days matches other things in that ordinance
It
that they
does.
have to conform to.
Well, I think one of the things we were looking at was instead of just crossing out things in that ordinance, we did want
Yeah.
rewriting it from the bottom up so that we don't have old things flowing into it. To try to simplify as much as possible, because at the end of the day, if somebody wants to open a business, they should be able to, from a citizen standpoint, easily read it, understand what's allowed, and move forward with what they want to do instead of. I mean, I've been involved in this for 4 years, and I still can't read the sign ordinance and know exactly what's what.
And on that one, you put it was an amendment, so for my preference, I like amended and restated, so we can ditch the old one in its entirety. If it's an amendment, then you have to keep the old one to put the two together and try to compare them. So.
You want amended and restated.
Well, if you're gonna call it an amendment, it needs to be restated in its entirety, so no one has to go back and search for the old ordinance and any amendments there to prior.
But what if it's
Does
a
that
new,
make sense?
what if it's a new ordinance that's passed entirely?
Yeah.
Just.
Then it's
supersede the
not an
previous.
amendment,
Right.
then it is an amendment. It's a,
Then it's just a brand new ordinance.
it should be a brand new
Yeah,
and
replace.
replaced, but just that example said it was an amendment. And we wanna be careful with that, cause I feel like that's part of the confusion. People don't understand what's required, because we have some amending items, and which means you still gotta go back to the original and any amendment.
Well, then you read like page 26 and it
Yeah.
says something, and then you gotta read all the way to page 33, and then it removes it again. And like, okay, if I
Yeah.
didn't read the whole thing and knew what I was looking at.
Well,
It
I
was
think,
on page one.
I think to make your you sleep better at night, because you obviously have a heart and a passion for this, and that's amazing. And I think you really want it to be right.
Yeah.
I think the simplicity, I don't have much to add to it anymore, because what
Yeah.
you're saying is really what I want. Get rid of the old and start new.
Yeah,
The easiest thing we can do from here, if you do have a concern and we miss something, which I'm sure we're gonna miss something in there that we're gonna want to add, right? Or do, like, it's gonna be easier to add to a 5 or 10 page thing
Yes.
than to try to look back. So I think, no fear, if we miss something, let's just reinstate it. Or sorry, amend it and add something to it. And then that would be easier, but I think it's gonna be case by case, because I think people are gonna really like this, and it's gonna be better and flowing easier.
Well, what I'm hoping is that if we list out what's allowed instead of listing out what's not allowed and then defining all of it, it doesn't get quite as confusing. But if you list what is allowed and somebody has some great idea that doesn't fit or tough enough to come to us for a variant, when we sit here and say, okay, that makes sense, we'll give this variant.
Right.
I'm a big fan of variances because I think it gives us the opportunity to be flexible when it fits, versus a lot of people think variances are bad because it's just you going against your word, but that's the whole point of variances is, does this make sense? And I want to, something.
yeah, I like the shorter and total new,
Yeah.
you get your rest. And then somewhere that little caveat that says, if it's not stated in here, it doesn't mean you can do it. 'Cause we had that issue last year, south of town, where we denied him, and then he skipped us, and he went straight to city council, and they approved. And he didn't come back with a change, and his comment was because it wasn't stated.
Well, the nice thing about it, it's vetted right off the bat, first with Warren.
Yes.
So that really is our first line of defense. And then for you, like I said, I want to compliment you on that, but don't fear about that. I think it'll be easier for us to catch the BS versus people really look at that sex anyway.
Yeah.
I think they're doing it.
It
And
went
after
live.
we have 18 years of business now.
I agree.
Whereas I like freedom, but I'm also like, come on, go
Yeah.
back down to the gym. And there was high-end signs, they were already all there, so I was, kind of replaced what was there with just a vinyl thing, but I made sure it was done the first day, stuff was up there, but not everyone did. It was literally, they didn't care. you know, put a piece of plywood up and they were spray painting it, now open.
I think
Okay.
the last thing that we probably need to talk about is maximum sign size. So right now we've got it based upon the size of the building, which to me makes sense. The bigger your building, the bigger your sign. But we talked about it, and I think having a maximum size for certain things that are very, very large buildings, right? I mean, Lowe's, being able to have a sign that's the entire length of the thing would be probably too big in my thought, but maybe not, if y'all disagree. I think Relo may not have a sign that's 400 feet would be too big, but you know,
A
100,
big
200 feet.
beer barrel.
Well, I mean, I think if they had a 18-foot, 4-foot tall Relo sign that every person who drives through town sees it, does it, they'd probably be good. Now, should it have requirements that it should be 100 feet long? Yeah, probably. So what do we think that would be?
The reason why I agree with you is because I've seen a strip center similar to Lowe's where they will put, like it was a Big Lots that had taken over an old strip center that actually had all those doors. And they ended up closing those doors and they put this big sign and all the way across it. And it looks bad.
Could you use the same concept of what you've already proposed for the amount of linear footage of the front of your building, basically your lot size, is that's the size of the sign that would be allowed to, so whether it's on a building or on the ground? Because I know on the 281, I don't think you can have more than 4x8 or 5x9 anyways because of visibility issues with TxDOT, but
So the idea is that this would fit for whether you have it on your building, whether you have it on a monument sign. But if you've got a building that has a relays, that's a lot of size that would then create a sign they would never do, but I still think we should have it in there at a maximum of, I don't know, what's. Oh,
I know, I think if it can fit on their building, they should be able to have it, because I think it'll be great.
If it's
But what about
aesthetically
monument
pleasing to
The
the eye.
monument sign,
does that still just have the same structure?
I would think it's just a lot thing.
like whatever you said, like that per something per foot is what you have in there. Do you do something saying like if you had a 200-foot frontage, then it could be, you know, 5% of that
Oh, so you're saying instead of building size, frontage size?
frontage size. So it'd be the same concept of what you're doing there with those signs, but then this would make sense, like you had 1,000 foot, then you couldn't have more than 5% or
I wonder
whatever.
what Real's building frontage is.
Or if they totally changed it because they added a whole front lot that they bought and all that, they have more frontage than they used to have that before.
Right, now, do I think they need a much bigger sign? Absolutely, I hear people every day say, oh, is this brewery around here? You just drove by it, but because of the sign, you can't tell. It's
Yeah, it's hard to find it if you don't, it took me, I've actually gone by it a couple of times, because you're going pretty fast. And it's a pretty small sign.
So I don't know how many other places it would apply to besides Real, and once again, I don't think they're gonna do something that's on Facebook, but I do think it's pertinent for us to at least have it in there because we don't know what's gonna come later.
Well, I do like the idea of frontage because their building ultimately would be bigger because it could be 2 stories or it could go back. So it could have a larger footprint within the building than the frontage. And it could be either on lot or business. In other words, if you had the 6 businesses within the retail strip, they don't each get the frontage.
No,
They only get their.
You do it like at the courthouse, you get multiple ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like
I don't know
business,
what that
business
means,
park
yeah.
signs.
And it's
We don't have-
setback, if it's bigger, in my mind, it's gonna have to go further back than the DOT probably requirement.
So I do think signage on 281 probably does have to be, ends up being a little bit larger because they're going faster.
Right.
There's gonna be some more setbacks, so you're right about Real Ale. Express, I always go there and I'm always almost missing it. because-
Yeah, you have to know it's there really.
Well, that could actually be good for safety, it's more visible than people are making their turn intentionally every time versus past. It's not a big, you
Yeah.
go through another neighborhood, side road, whatever it may be.
Well, from a business success standpoint, knowing business is there is a huge portion of them getting dollars, which then goes to tax dollars for the city, so.
Well, I'm going on business then, because they don't have much advertisement, and they sell millions of dollars worth of beer. I need a switch. I have a massive sign on mine.
But I think that's gotta be a call to DOT if it's on the,
Yeah,
if it's on the frontage of the lot. Now, if it's on the building, then I feel like the city can designate that because it would be back, but I think you're gonna have to go with whatever that DOT guideline is. Because we wouldn't wanna say you could have a 30-foot sign and then that's really against DOT regulation.
So all we need to do is figure out, I know it says in there that it reverts back to the state's law, but I guess it probably on 281 should say what that is,
it should.
maximum size sign based on textile regulation.
Well, actually, we should do both. If there's a different one from the state, is that then incorporate to a forestry? If you're getting them the same regulation as 281, it'd be incorrect. We'd have to know state and then talk to DOT and ask them, do they allocate a different one for not only 281, but they have the highway, they own the other roads too around here. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right, 1623,
yeah.
yeah,
So for them, if the sign's bigger at the front of the property, are they requiring it to go further back?
But I
Maybe
don't-
they have 8 feet and then they don't
I don't
care.
know if TxDOT's gonna have, yeah, that's what I was about to say. I don't know if TxDOT's gonna care about sign size. I think they're gonna care about setbacks.
Well, if the sign, that's what I said, but you still have to call them, because if the sign meets the right height before it begins, then they may not care, because the cars can see through, and as long as it's 8 feet, it's fine, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it may not just be the height, but it may be the underneath of it, when does it start? So if it's a big sign, like a billboard, you don't see those right next to the road, because you can't see under them, you know?
Is that gonna be on something we can find from the state, or is that something we ask TxDOT about? Where do we get?
I can talk textile.
Okay, I would just like our ordinance to explain it well enough that where people don't have to go to two places to know what they're doing.
Hopefully they can send them something.
Okay.
They should-
Yeah.
Or you can put it in, okay.
Cause then even if you did it, if that's a requirement for like 281 and the 32 and all these little side roads they truly own, then you could say that would fit for Fourth, that the city owns.
So let's simplify this. If Relay was gonna put a sign out in front of their building that was a big monument sign, how big do we think is too big?
I think anywhere 50 foot is just crazy. I don't think you need anything that big.
You're talking about, not squares, but you're talking about 50 feet long.
We
Okay,
have a height requirement of 15 feet, I think, is our requirement on signs.
I believe it should
A
have.
monument has to be under,
Can't be higher.
under 4 foot off the ground, right?
I believe so, a maximum of 64 square feet.
And also depends if you're on an intersection and this, that, and the other side of it, so.
So, I mean, 50 feet to me sounds too big, 20 feet to me by 4 feet doesn't sound too big.
No.
That sounds appropriate.
We'll do 5 by 25. Is your max.
125.
Because you really, like you said, there's not many properties that can even accommodate a sign that big.
So we're
Yeah.
40 times 2.75.
Big change, target all.
That's me.
Elementary on the state.
Well, what you find's gonna happen is they're gonna start putting them on the edge of their properties. So even though you probably don't really think a lot can accommodate, they certainly can, because they can start putting them right on their property lines as you go down the road. You see what I'm saying? Like those, they're on both sides, and all of a sudden.
Turn right here,
Yeah.
now.
So-
Well,
So at 2.75 feet for our building, that would give us 110 square feet. What we're talking about is a maximum of 125. I think that that's probably big enough for most any business in town. Do we all agree?
We haven't seen one yet, right?
what's, you're talking about the top, right? That's.
Yeah, so
What
we're-
size is that?
So we're 40 feet across, right now it's 64, but we're 40 feet across, so 40 times 2.75 puts us at 110.
Well, we're actually 64, we're 96 on a corner. I'm just looking at 9.03 through 232 cumulative sign. So 64 on a corner, it's 90, whatever I said, 96.
Okay, cumulative, so they've got 2. And so what we were taking out is deleting the additive portion of that where it's 1 + 1, where it's just each side gets the same allowance. And so You know, at 125, is that a fair maximum?
Well, so I'm just wondering, like, where did Rainbird phone have, like, the front of their building? Cause they've got a lot of space at the front of that building,
They used to have the money inside out there, so let's get
but I
that.
mean, on their building. Like, they've got the door, and then from the top of the door all the way to the top of their line, they've got a ton of space. They could put a really big, neat sign up there. I wouldn't want to restrict them to what our calculation is.
Were we talking about monument signs or were we talking about the building sign?
Both, we're trying to put some
Okay.
regulation in for both, because whether or not you're building,
Or like
Okay.
the new Main Street store that did the big mural looking things, like, I don't want to restrict people from doing things like
which one are we talking about?
that. The green gas station store,
Oh, yeah, but then murals would be considered separate.
but what if someone wanted to do a sign like that? That would kind of restrict them. I mean, it looks nice.
Is someone paying them?
Have you been by it?
Sean Cole's place, across from Shell Station.
You know what? I passed the other time, but I never even noticed it.
Right across the street from you.
Oh, yeah, I know, but there's a mural on there now?
Yeah, they got like a couple of them, I think.
That's really
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm not for restricting all of that because I think that it restricts people from being creative and on the building repairs.
I'll agree with that. I like
Yeah, I'm
the
okay
murals,
with
look better. I
murals.
love the old building walls. I
Yeah.
remember dilapidated, you know, gives them an option to put it on.
Well, so that was one of the things that we added in, was allowing for murals. They do need to go to Warren for approval, or just staff.
And so right now, with Sean's, with that mural we're talking about, I think when someone asked me, I didn't see where we couldn't, but it was it had to still be that 64 foot. So the question to y'all would be, what would you allow a mural to be? Would you allow the side of the building?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Nothing.
Like, I don't have problems with
Structure.
murals because they're on the building. What I don't want to see is a whole bunch of big billboards down acting like
We're
monument
talking about them
signs.
on the building.
Yeah, those I'm good. I'm good with those. But
You're
he
talking about
doesn't,
monument.
yeah, the monument side, I think should be
That should be
limited.
restricted.
Well, I think
We're
it's
talking
one
about
per
sign on the
basic
building.
building.
Yeah, like where beyond.
Yeah, on the building, I don't
You
have
need
a
a
problem.
sign, the mural, I think that
They
saves their
painted
budget,
on
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
That's a great idea. You know, there's not one gorgeous town in Texas that I've been through in the last 10 some years that doesn't have murals, and I like
yeah.
them. Even in Austin, as trendy and trippy as they are, there's really not a one that is subjecting really anything one way. It's just a pretty piece of art. Or to do one over there, yeah, that whole blank wall on that side into the turnaround, that would be pretty cool.
So what's the limitation now for self-standing signs? Not the ones on the buildings,
64.
because those aren't
64.
64.
Yeah.
So does that need to change for a reason? Like, is somebody feeling like the monument signs aren't big enough, or?
Yeah.
They want monument signs bigger?
Well, I mean, it's 64 feet. That's pretty small for some big businesses. Now you're talking about the problem Rainbird ran into is theirs got hit by a truck and then they had to come into compliance and they weren't allowed to re-put it back where it was. And so if y'all noticed, they don't have the monument sign anymore. It's been gone for 3 or 4 years. I think part of that was right away and part of it was how they were legally allowed to do the sign. Basically, they couldn't just rebuild it.
I think it was before I got here.
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing about that.
Yeah, the 18-wheeler drove through the front door.
There was a spell there when the city code enforcer was just running around with misinformation, but it was very intimidating. So actually, I don't think they were in the wrong. It's the right of way. So really, it's not making intersecting roads coming in and out there, private driveways. I think it just was one of those where he just said no, and it was just too hard to go back.
I don't remember what the reason was.
I was told I couldn't put up temporary signs for the grand opening of the gym, and sure enough, I went to the city and talked to old guy. She goes, "Oh yeah, there's a weekend permit. You know, you can pay for it the grand opening." Yada yada yada. So when he had already said take it down, we removed everything. So I think it was just strong arming. But it's unfortunate for them at this point.
Was the machine there?
It was Norman Potts.
Well,
So that would be now, the rule is basically 2 sheets of plywood is our size for monument signs, is what it is, 8 by 8. So if you look at that sort of visually, do you want them bigger?
Well, that's why we went,
Like 2 square feet or something.
that's why we went off of the tier size based on size of building, because I think some buildings should have bigger signs that they're bigger than a smaller building. Now, she makes a good point where you're talking about Rainbird having a lot of space. I mean, I don't know how big they are, but I'm assuming that front of the building is probably 20 feet, so that's about 55 or 64, so they actually get smaller sign, which, and then again, not really in favor of, so. I don't know.
20 feet wide or 20 feet?
I'm assuming 20 feet wide. I have no idea. I haven't gotten out there and measured it, just rough guessing this thing. Assuming it's about as wide as Permanent Pottery.
About 35, 40 on the front, but either way, I think if you did, sit like you're doing, simplify it up to 25 max or whatever.
That's 125, not to exceed.
Yeah, not to exceed, and then they can always just take it from that ratio and bring it down, whatever they want to spend the money
And
on.
then if they had an artist rendition that said, hey, this is what we'd like to do, and granted a variance, we don't have to apply for a variance.
Thoughts, you're the one's gonna have to be able to pull it.
All right, sounds good.
So is that gonna include a 125-foot monument sign? Is that what we're talking about here?
That was my original thought, but my original thought was that we scale off of the size of the building. So the smaller buildings have smaller signs, but Julie makes a good point of, you know, to what degree.
I mean, for me, I don't care what they put on the building. I don't find that's an obstruction. It's not a view obstruction. It's not a object out there. So for me, they can put any size sign on the building.
It's the building.
Yeah, if they want to. Like, I don't have a problem with that. It can be a mural, it can be a sign. So, but for me, I don't want big giant monument signs in everybody's front yard, because then I think it starts
Right.
like a billboard town.
That's why we were talking about a tier
Yeah.
structure based on size, is because most of the buildings that are, you know, monument signs, like 2 peas in a pod or 3 peas in a pod, being,
Mhm.
you know, 15, 20 feet, they would have, I don't know, what's that, 45-foot monument sign, which would be, you know, that big, but then you get Real being a massive structure, would have one half the size of the room, you know, it would just tier depending on what they need.
But all they have to do is run that sign down the side of their property. So let's say most of their traffic comes from the south. They can run a sign from the front of their property all the way down that property line and try to get to 125 feet. You
Well,
see what
that's
I'm
why we're
saying?
talking about lot size to regulate the monument signs instead of just its sign size.
Yeah.
So, do we wanna say
They
monument
have a two-unit
signs,
front yard.
do we wanna say monument size sign as being 2.75 feet per 1 foot of your facing of your building? And then on the wall signs, they just need to fit your building.
Yeah,
Does that make more sense?
when it's set by 45, I don't know if you're misunderstanding, it's not 45 feet long. It's just a square footage.
Oh, at the square foot.
I'm not saying, so 45, no, I think you're misunderstanding.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, everyone would put one right on the, okay,
We'll put it this way, acre off the
Okay.
road.
They're bigger than that.
okay,
Yeah, no, no.
okay, that works.
Block letters.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me see if I
Yeah,
can understand it. So the wall sign is a certain percentage of your wall?
We started, what they're talking about now is saying,
It just needs to fit
just
the
needs
wall.
to fit your.
Okay. I'm gonna play devil's advocate.
Absolutely, please.
Okay, so you're saying it could be like a mural where it's the entire wall? Like, you're talking side wall or you're talking about the front?
First side of your building.
Okay.
Now tell us why it doesn't work.
Or whichever one, advertises as the main road, which would be 2, you want to be the front. whatever.
No, but I think,
If they want to advertise it,
yeah, I don't care if you really want to advertise to the creek.
I don't care.
And it would be saying, I'm fine with it, but you're a really big sign. You have a side of the wall that doesn't have anything on it, and I guess you could have windows, but it would, you wouldn't paint the rear windows, that's one thing.
well, yes.
So you're saying basically,
No, well, like, they don't use over here.
It would be on the window.
so here's an example, right? So you've got, you need it, we got it, whichever one this one is. That entire wall could be a sign, so we get that.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm okay with that as long as you know that's what you're doing.
I don't know if I'm okay with that big of a sign, but I mean, that's what we're having a
And that's
conversation.
Well, I'm
what
okay with
that's what
the
they
north.
used to do historically, so I was gonna pull up,
Why not?
I think the key,
I think the, correct me
I still don't know
with what you're saying, I think the difference is a mural on the side of the building is a whole lot different than a giant piece of plywood on the side of the building that just has the lettering that just says.
How do we regulate that?
But mural's more about art,
Yeah,
and a sign is more about advertising.
yeah, that's
but
right.
y'all considered that garage used to thing a sign because it was a mural that was attached.
Right.
And it was the whole side of the wall and it was adorable.
It was
So,
a narrow.
so the planning commission chair at the time felt that way. I don't know if I would, but I think that was right before I got here.
That was before I was on here.
Yeah.
That was actually right before.
Warren, I've been here too long, I can't say that anymore. Right before I got here.
I'm gonna keep saying that.
As long as you can, dude.
I would consider, see, that was one of those.
No, it was the same time before you got here. It was just,
It was a sign, it was
no
attached.
one wanted to come in here and double check because the guy, he was pretty hardcore. He was physically like removing signs from the yards.
Now that you're on.
It was, do you need normal? I don't think you remember.
Before my.
Maybe right before you got here.
So then the question really gets back to how big's too big?
Right.
If Julie's point of they should have the flexibility to do it, are we okay with a sign for you need it, we got it across this entire building? If we are, great. If not, let's have a conversation.
I'm not really just for a sign with just those letterings that somebody just, I mean, a mural doesn't bother me, for me.
Yeah, murals different.
It is
Yeah, it's
different,
different.
because it is like Warren said, you consider it more art.
Sure.
Like this, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want the words.
Yeah, it's a fine line between someone just
Then
putting.
you need to limit them.
Taqueria.
Then you're better probably to limit them and then they can come in for variance.
Now it's 10%, but you guys want to be 30%? I mean,
Well, we're talking about 100%.
why not? I know, but maybe if you look at some kind of, I'm not saying it has to be 30, I'm just throwing that out. Would you be 40? I mean, 100 a lot.
Yeah, it's 10% now, you said?
I believe it's 10%.
For a mural,
No, you're
No,
not.
for like a blue sign.
Julie, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm just looking at examples, like I'm just thinking, I mean, if for example,
That looks good.
Rainbird, if they wanted to put
That would
something
look
like
good.
that up there, but maybe they don't want to hand paint it on the building, they want to put one up there.
Sure.
You know,
what's wrong?
Then you get to the same controversy of how do we regulate ugly versus
It's
not?
currently 10% now, not to exceed 64 foot. That's 9.03203.
and like this is at Magnolia. These are attached.
Do they,
Yeah,
do
that's all those previous.
they just?
Oh, okay. That was nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they come into the
Did you
sign.
get the design, get the design?
Warren, when you give somebody a sign permit, do you see the design or do you just get the sign permit?
I mean, they have to show me what it looks like.
Yeah.
But I'm not looking at it for, like, if I like it or not.
Right,
I'm just-
it's, is it legally allowed?
The legally allowed, it's not, I'll tell you something else I never says on there, it's gonna be hill country colors. I have never, like, I think it's a, always,
Yeah.
green, red,
We want to chop that up.
yeah, I think black.
So what about for, okay, mural to me, it's more art and that's on the side of the building, but for just a piece of plywood where they paint on there, buy you, pay you, or whatever, and it's 10% now, what about 30%? Cause I think we sort of want to avoid them coming in for variances, because then I feel like variances are gonna be given on a judgment of whether you think it looks good or not, which I think we want to avoid. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody would get one because you'd be like, oh, that's cool. And then someone else brings one and you'd be like,
Well, okay, when we are talking about 10%, are we talking about
We like it.
front facing structure, including windows? So are we doing like 40 feet by 30 feet? Is that how that's calculated?
I'll read it for you. Only one wall sign shall be permitted for business in a non-residential zoning district unless the property is a corner, in which case two signs are permitted, wall signs are not permitted in the residential zoning districts, and it talks about 10% not to exceed 64 foot. So my understanding then is that it's just facing the right of way. However, I kind of wonder if Algave, would normally allow two wall, but we haven't yet.
I think we should allow people wherever the heck they want in terms of one per side. But my question then becomes, and I'm just gonna use regular again because that's what I know. If we're 40 foot across and 25 feet high, right? So that's 40 by 25 times 0.30. That would be 300 feet for a sign. That's a big dang sign.
Yeah, I think a cool sign.
Well, but that would, I mean, that would be bigger than the space I had to put.
I don't think most people would be able to afford that sign.
Yeah,
Start a business, but if you did leave it open-ended where a mural is the same as painting an advertising sign, I think that would be a good thing to separate murals,
but if
full
you're
size.
just do what you get.
but not open, Monday through Friday, the taco joint, and then literally is either plywood or just painted number, I think that would help the very, your actual advertising sign or within those square footage things, mural would be the whole thing. That'd be easy enough.
Because they could
Yeah,
come
like that.
in literally paint by your
Yeah.
behavior.
I don't think we'll have a
That's
problem with
the
people, oh, yeah, go on, there's a massive sign there, it will
Yeah.
go, "Ooh, I can paint this sign.
Yeah.
My guy,
He's a writer.
Yeah.
and he's not a Michelangelo, so it's literally, latex over oil paste and it's peeling off the next year. Must prime with Teal's primer first, of course. But, I think that would be good, just differentiate the mural from that, mural from those, and then up this 10% to 30, that's huge. And again, more than
That's
enough.
not big.
I do.
So 10%. We're looking at red bud, sort of seems a little small though, doesn't it?
Well, so 40 by 20 times 0.10, that's 100, but we're only allowed maximum 64.
What
How
if
does it be?
25%?
I mean, even 100 is fairly big. We were talking about doing 110 with the new ordinance. So if you do 40 by 25 times 0.25, that didn't work. 250, I don't even know why I did that for that. 250 foot sign, which that's a big sign too. I like with our windows and stuff, I don't think I could fit that there. But if somebody had different
These
structure,
people could stick it on the side of the building.
Yeah.
Because there's the space between.
You could fit a 200 square foot sign real nice up there.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it might go from corner to corner.
What's your frontage up there on the front? 45?
40,
How large is the sign up there now?
So if you did,
64.
well, even 175 square foot, that's, 5 by 35, so you 3-4 foot up the edges. I think building the front of the building for something like that is great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
well, a cafe,
Yeah.
boom, it's there, and it actually, a lot of older, like towns were saying, that's all they did was paint signs, right? It was just what they had, but it looked cool to park this real.
Well, yeah, Lebanon's used to that whole front.
Oh, yeah.
Red Benson needs to get signs on hers like yesterday.
So
That whole place has no signs.
the two things that I want us to make sure that we're covering is one, are we opening this up for business to be flexible and bringing as much traffic as physically possible, but are we also making the town look nice and not go too crazy? So just think about the worst case scenario of anything that we decide if somebody's taking advantage of it and doing it with a toddler and a paintbrush.
Well, what about doing 72 square feet or just doing like the next step up? And if somebody wants it, they come for variance. And if somebody wants bigger.
My original thought was let's take out the percentage of wall because every wall is different.
Okay.
I don't think you should have your main sign that covers brick and then also covers windows. Now, if you want to have a main sign and then a couple of window signs, kind of like what we're looks great. It's fine, but how do we write in a regulation that covers all bases, but is worded easily.
One.
So, first of all, like I think Andrew said, is a mural, and we have to
Separate that.
and then that would be separate, and that is art-based and not necessarily, advertisement. And there's advertisement on your wall, and we're hearing some percentages, we all are thinking about different things, but that has to be reasonable. Maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 25%, whatever it is, you think it is. But I do agree with the other statement that if you're talking about putting an actual, putting actual sign on there, that's expensive. That's a lot more expensive than a mural. So there's an expense this person can actually put a wall.
Now, my plywood's like $30.
Yeah,
$40,
but it
both
says
that
approved
time.
building materials, and just a piece of plywood is not a permanent sign. It's gotta be the marine grade, or it's gotta be
Yeah.
the aluminum cladded, or the vinyl. And of course, with the ordinance too, it has in there, if your sign's looking shabby, you have X amount of time.
Right.
So in all honesty, this is gonna give us an opportunity to say, hey, right up front, make sure you're building around the right materials, because you will be asked to replace it. And that right there, I think, will help off the start. So having those kind of scope of work clauses in there that would give them general guidance, point in the right directions, throw a buzz out to the local sign people that can build proper signs. Because if people are just slapping up against the building, I would say the warranty needs to go and stop them right away.
Well,
Even a primer over a piece of regular BC plywood is not gonna last you. And
We approved the sign for the vape shop, and they were gonna do a really nice, it was gonna be pretty big, and they haven't done it yet, because, I don't think they've done it yet, because it's expensive. So that's why they still have temporary. I didn't talk to guys, say, hey, how long they have this temporary, but that is, a temporary is super cheap, he just has like a little, whatever it is, felt or whatever that is, canvas. Well, you don't have a canvas or something, he has some kind of temporary sign. So, and that's a lot less expensive than what you're talking about. For a nice
Well,
sign.
so originally we talked about getting away from the 10% sign, because I think it's hard to understand. I mean, I'm still sitting here asking questions. Is that the whole building
Right.
front? Versus saying, finding some sort of a easy way to understand, this is what I can have. Like, my building is 25 feet long. I can have X.
So I can have a 10-foot sign.
Like, yeah, I want to simplify it to where people can read it and understand,
Yeah.
having to sit here and be like, well, what does that even mean? It didn't explain it there. I'm guessing that that's what it means. So that was where we got the footage based upon frontage, but I don't want somebody that's got a 64-foot sign today to have to go down to 55 because we changed something and they've got a small space. So how do we do it?
We've always been 64 square feet. Pretty much.
Yeah, we've always been 64. There's always been 10% or 64, with 64 being the most you can have. So if you have a percentage but didn't put a cap on it, then it would be more flexibility, right?
But so then do we just put a little one-liner in there that says percentage is based upon length of building front and height?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea.
As long as it explains it.
Well, it
Yeah.
explains it that it can be, it's more or less is building, but that's gonna bring people.
Well, I
to
mean,
what feels.
So now you can put business, not just building.
In
Just based around multi-
in plain English.
House, mobile home. And so my thought would be maybe 20%. And 20% is pretty large.
Yeah.
40 by 20 times 0.20, that's 160 feet. I mean, last time we were talking, that would have put my sign at 110, now we're at 160. If you do,
Do we have?
What about just 100 square feet?
it's too big, that's bigger than we do. So if you do 400 times 0.20, so that puts Rainbird probably somewhere around 80, they're 64.
What about just 100 square feet from 64 square feet, which it's always been? Why not now say they can do 100 square feet?
Well, I don't
So they
know.
don't have to calculate?
I think it has to be so many inches within the edges of their wall. Like if Rainbird wanted to do one, it needed to be, 6 inches from the
edge of their wall and setback.
Yeah.
Setback is set on the front.
Has to fit within the space.
Fit within a space according to the building size.
Okay, so the idea is that we want signs that cover the whole front of the building, I'm not opposed, I'm just asking.
I don't think most people are gonna do it, but I think just saying you have the option to have that whole space to, you know, kind of whatever to fill it.
Okay.
You
Lauren,
might-
you've dealt with this in other cities, your thoughts? I don't wanna make that like hard.
No, I think that's fine. I mean, I think it makes sense. I mean, the hard, well, strict ordinances are not hard, if you just like, can't do anything, but well, no, I think this is fine. I think giving you flexibility is good, as long as it's, you know, clear.
Do the words say sign must fit within the borders of your walls?
Well, yes. I think
Yeah,
that-
the face of the building or structure, sign needs to fit within those parameters, basically, you know, dumb it up a little bit, just a window. And this is, and you can say this is
Yeah,
up to, you know, not to exceed, you know, and obviously reference or recommendations would be a sign that fits your space, you know, or something there.
I mean, yeah, we hope somebody's gonna do that.
I think y'all are what if like one bad person would come in here, like, really the real estate here for commercial property is expensive, signs are expensive, you're not gonna get somebody coming in and doing something janky that's gonna be permanent, like he was saying, it's, if they do something janky, it's probably gonna be something that is gonna have to be replaced.
To do something, John, yeah.
You know, if I had more time, I'd
Yeah,
love
so
to be
it's
the guy
really
there
like-
issuing the permits and giving them good recommendations, go to the site with them and say, this is great, because then, you know, they really just want to open it, right? And also say, hey, those electric, you know, that lit sign, that's about $5,000, you know, and they really are, the environment and framework and the whole deal, they're expensive, so. I think, like Julie said, I think that this is really gonna be a very small percentage of what people are actually doing.
And here we are saying all this, and I mean, look at the Shell station, they're. We've got stuff going on already, and worried about one more person coming in, and then they fly where the.
Yeah, I told Viv the other day, we got around, like, dude, I can't even pull out to get here to get in my office. It's like, you gotta pull that shack looking TV.
Yeah, I'm like reading the whole frontage as they drive by, everything they got going on, because there's like so much to read.
Tacos, hey.
Think that the, movement for signage is more artsy, and so that's why I think it should be opened up. It's more coming back vintage kind of a look.
So fit within the parameters of your building with what, 6-inch setbacks or do you have setback? Do they care?
I don't care, I'm not gonna go measure it, if it's in their space, if it's in their space, right?
Sure.
If they want to do it, they're ready.
Okay,
So everyone
We'll
stair
have,
master.
we'll have restricted in monuments.
Yeah.
Sit there on the stairmaster, maybe the ladder.
And Warren will verify.
so wall signs must sit within the parameters of your walls, or within your structure. And then monument signs,
Within a certain
do we want to say
square footage of your signage.
2.75
Yeah, I'd limit those, so they don't
feet?
get big get boards.
Yeah,
A frontage or a building? So if you got a small building or a big lot,
well, like they were saying, the P and the Potter over there, they really have a very small front yard. So they could have a small monument sign, but real well, they have larger property in the front, they could have their big sign.
They need it.
2.75 for what?
that's what we were talking about. Is that per property frontage or per building frontage?
Property.
I say property line.
That's,
And if you need to, if someone's got 3,000 foot, obviously we don't want them to take up 1,500 of it with a sign, so have a cap, but
Yeah.
no, I don't think we're ever gonna have, you know, within our this district.
So 100-foot wide, you could have a 275-foot monument sign, is that what you're saying?
that's what I was saying cap, and I think we cap at like 150.
Okay. So you want to cap it? what-
Yeah.
I think we have to
I
cap
mean, you
something.
have to cap it, you can't have, I mean,
Yeah.
you can, but it's,
I mean, that over doubles real L sign. That's fair, right? I don't know how much frontage they would have though versus Because I think their property is like this, so are we giving them a sign defined by this or by the building back here?
Well,
The frontage is
it has to be on the actual frontage of where we're putting on the sign, so I think that frontage there, they have what, probably 200 foot maybe there, I think
Is that long?
yeah, maybe 175 maybe.
Pretty long.
It's a long area, so obviously you wouldn't want him to fill that with a 50 foot wide.
We don't want them on a billboard, but if you cap it at 125 or 150, then that would be
Yeah.
a good sign.
Okay, anybody have a preference of 125 or 150? It really only applies to Relio and maybe,
Yeah,
Yeah, there's some special.
Lowe's.
Special.
like we said, you can variance it, if there's any kind of special, some of the sides that do some.
Architectural
that would be A lot between, DG and, or the chest club and, stripes, that, there's another decent size frontage, but.
Oh, and Chestnut could have a nice sign. Easier to read.
Chase Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that they're there because I know that they're there.
I
You
mean,
know where all the cars are.
I guess that these things, because you know how, you have to have the 290 wine trail and the big, big, huge monument signs.
Haven't in a while, but yes.
Um, I'm just wondering, like, I don't know what kind of businesses are gonna come in, like beauty. So that, because I think when y'all, I'm thinking about just gonna here, well, y'all see that, it's like a big lit up kind of a thing.
Was that 10 by 6?
I mean, that would be nice if Real L could do something really creative and cool that was really big like that. I think when y'all are thinking about them, you don't want them to be these big things. I really just more neighborhood type.
Well, but even that size, I don't think it's a big deal. I think that's probably 100.
I think they would do some cool and fun too.
Oh, yeah. I just think we need to figure out whatever maximum we want.
Size.
Yeah, so I mean, it's 150 too big, it's 125 too big.
Well, a 125 would be just a little bigger than a 10 by 10.
It would basically be twice what they're allowed to do.
Yeah.
It's like that big 3D.
Yeah.
Almost up.
I mean, that sounds good to me. And then whatever that setback really needs to be, because there's a lot of signs that aren't they aren't set back like they should be.
That's pretty.
Hard to read.
It is hard to read.
It's big.
So setbacks right now are 8 feet for textile.
I think that's what's in our ordinance now, it's 8 feet.
It's 8 feet. Yeah, well,
But like, I don't think they're, like, they put up a new sign at the hotel, that's right on the fence line, and it's almost sort of hanging on to the highway. The new B sign they put up, so it really should be the edge of that exterior of the sign at 8 feet, not the post, and then the sign goes more, you know what I'm saying? It should be the exterior edge at 8 feet.
Okay, so I have a strong one in here.
Because if you just put the post at 8 feet and then you put your sign out, it can hang out into the road when people hit their,
Those are not like
Trucks.
full sides, so.
yeah. Well, even the double. But.
I mean, I think setback's gonna be decided.
Yeah, it's 8 feet, I think now.
I like that really.
Yeah. It's just too close to the
It
road.
is.
It just needs to go back about another foot or two.
Okay, so maximum 150.
Either or to me, I don't have a
I'm gonna
preference.
go higher.
Okay, 150. Okay, so we'll do a maximum monument sign of 150 based upon 2.75 square feet per 1 foot of property frontage. And then wall signs not to exceed the size of the building. And then I think we put in some size parameters for the other signs that probably fairly close.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd put in there, property frontage / or business frontage of multi-tenant.
The 2.75 times the property frontage capped at 150. That's what. we're talking
For monuments, yes.
For monument.
Yeah.
And the wall sign
Has to fit within the wall.
has to fit within right.
So Lowe's, how big is that?
That whole piece up front. Right under 400.
So But that's also a huge building.
Right, I was just kind of curious, and then, so in the past, they had 64 feet, but then it had to be split between the tenants, so each tenant, there's what, 4 or 5 women in there?
We only have 3 on the front.
Right, but I would assume the sign would
There's
include,
5 signs on the front right now.
so that 64 was then cut down by 5, so I guess then the 150 would be cut down by 5?
Yeah, that's why I put that little caveat for multi-tenant buildings.
Correct. Oh, okay, so you look for.
So
Yeah,
they-
the caveat should be that it's either your building or if you're in a multi-tenant like that retail strip, then you only get based on your
Right, so then you get
business
They
style.
have to
30.
share that kind of
Okay.
space.
Yeah.
So you get 30
Yeah.
feet per business. I mean, that's
It's not per business, it's per building.
for the 150, but then each business would get a portion of that.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So right now, there's 64
So
divided
you-
by 5, so right now they get 12 feet per business.
Yeah.
This gives them 50. Or 30.
Yeah. I don't know what the ordinance read in Austin, but in South Austin, I think there are a lot of complexes there and they got their big monument sign and everyone got, basically it was 1 foot by 4 foot with the little slivers. They look smaller from the road, but you actually get up there and change them out. So we had about, I think, 25 tenants, so we had 25 spaces there. And then by the code there, 4 by 8 is what was allowed according to their building size, and their buildings were 25 foot frontage is what we had. And, you know, beautiful complex and everything looked great. You know, obviously, no matter how nice the sign was, you really couldn't read a lot of the businesses. It was the sign on the front that was really the main visibility.
Do we want to mess with, well, my train of thought there. Maximum height of monuments?
I thought everything was 15 feet right now, isn't it?
That's a really, really high view for a monument.
Oh, yeah, that's something. I think that was for whole
It's
site.
like-
I think
I
monument-
think it's 6 feet.
Monument site, I don't look, I thought it was 8 foot. Let me check.
How do I feel about the change signs? Cause all the change signs down there are falling apart.
You're talking about for the digital.
No, the,
Change, change copy. Yeah.
Well, I would have approved digital. I wasn't against digital as long as it was like a 2 matte color, no neon, and it could only change at most maybe once an hour. No
Well-
flashing, no scrolling, so
I don't,
I
think-
wasn't necessarily against them.
I think those signs weren't allowed previously, they're all grandfathered in, and the new stuff that we're talking about, they're not allowed in, but they would all be grandfathered.
what, the ones that are falling apart and those would meet the same code as everything else that needs to be replaced when it's falling apart, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So then is the expectation that they come into compliance, or are they grandfathered and they're allowed to fix their product?
Well, what it says in the code is they're grandfathered in until they have damage and then they have to come into compliance.
Correct.
And what is it, 30% of the sign is damaged?
30% of the side is
Yeah, then they have to come in. So as long as nobody hits it, they're good.
Well, is rusted and broken plastic and everything else considered?
Yeah,
damage?
he can go tag them
Absolutely.
for, he can tag them individually then.
I think that's more of a, hey, you're obviously gonna be grandfathered and we're not trying to just take it down, but we do need you to repair it, do the code.
Yeah. That takes a code enforcement officer.
Get the places that have signs that are falling down that are grandfathered, like the copy chain signs or whatever it's called, to fix them.
Well, yeah, we gotta fix them. Monument signs are 6 foot.
Change copy.
Yeah, just with an hour, just right in
So
there.
monument signs are 6 foot tall.
Okay.
Monument signs are 6 foot, and then something called directory sign, which I think we probably,
This way.
Directional signs, right?
and, well, we're talking about.
With multiple businesses.
The multiple business, I think the John Stone sign would come in, on the left, Echo, I think that is 15 foot. But you wouldn't be allowing those anymore if you could just all monument, correct? You would be allowing directory signs like that. So those are on poles.
Sure, unless it's comes in for variance and if it's something.
Okay, but anyway, directory sign of 15. That's fine. I mean,
I mean, pole signs is something we talked about getting away from.
you want to get away from the pole sign, so that's why you're being more liberal, be more liberal signs, some of you that thing. You're trying to get away from, you know what I'm saying?
You're conservative names.
I lost.
Let it keep on board and support that back lane, keep it moving.
Well, we do have, I think, some directory signs down at the dentist.
Yeah.
Past the library, they have one because they have multiple businesses in there.
But then that would be a monument sign that would have multiple businesses.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Right. So it was 6 foot before, so what would you want height to be now? 8 foot?
The monument 6, but then go wider. Because in the past, it's been 64 feet, so you were one piece of plywood, or, you know, it was more vertical than wall,
Right.
but now we're giving you more space, they can stretch it out.
You want to keep it 6, but you're just allowing more space.
I just think lower is better, because when you're driving, you won't be able to see over the damn thing. Well, that's my thought.
Yeah, they love to where I want to block their business anyway.
Yeah, I try to leave those as they are.
You know, if Julie wants to put a big latte cup in there, if you can, it's a jumbo latte cup. Variants approved.
Big balloon flying. Like up 100 feet back. All right, does anybody have anything else? I think it's on progress.
Some good progress.
All right, we have a motion to get out of here.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right. Well, now you're done.
Not bad.
At 7?